Senator, great to have you here. Thank you so much for being here. We want to put off trade for a second because I just want to talk about taxes for a second. That's really the mother's milk of the Republican Party is dealing with taxes which are a craw in the throat of virtually every American, particularly at this time of the year. A little history. From 1981 to 1987, Ronald Reagan, the great Ronald Reagan, lowered taxes from 70% ultimately down to 28%. As a result of that, we ended up with 7 very fat, good years for our economy until George H. Bush broke his no-tax pledge and raised taxes, and of course, he lost the election. Well, now there's some rhinos, I call them rhinos, maybe I'm impolite in doing so, but going against the Republican trait of cutting taxes, saying we should raise taxes. Is this a gift to Democrats, despite their best efforts to shoot themselves in the foot?
Well, first, David, how come you have to work today and Kudlow doesn't?
Well, I went to church last night, Senator. Kudlow is going to church today, so we made that deal.
Well, I think Kudlow should have to give you some of his money. I just wanted to say that.
I got enough. Money ain't everything. Anyway.
Now let me answer your question. 5,000 years of human experience demonstrates that when you tax something, you get less of it. There is some discussion, some rhetoric, as we put together a reconciliation bill about raising taxes on certain folks, primarily the so-called rich. I'm not a big believer in envy taxes. I don't believe in making tax policy on the basis of class warfare. I hope we don't do that. I spent 4 years under President Biden, where all he wanted to do, along with my Democratic friends, was talk about who ought to be paying more in taxes.
Right.
I'm tired of that. The real issue is what the hell happened to the money, and how can we get this economy growing again? That's one person's opinion. Well, I may be wrong, but I doubt it.
One of the ways that you do get the economy going again, and I'm sure you know this, the most important phrase in economics is incentives matter. And if you provide more incentives for people to work harder, whether they're poor, middle class, or rich, they will do so. And one of those incentives is lowering the amount of money that they make out of their hard-earned efforts that they have to pay in taxes. If you lower that burden, they generally tend to work more. We've seen it happen going back to the 1920s, to JFK, a Democrat who lowered tax rates, to Ronald Reagan, of course, right up to Trump.
Well, look, Republicans won because we promised to get prices down and the economy moving again. We need to do 3 things to do that. Number one, reduce government spending, cut the spending porn like Musk is trying to do. Mm-hmm. Number 2, deregulate the economy. That'll lower the prices on goods and services. Yes. And number 3, design a tax system that looks like somebody designed it on purpose, that leads to growth, that leads to business investment, that causes wages to go up. If we do those 3 things, the economy will boom, these prices will go down. Let's not take our eye off the ball.
All right, let's move over to trade, because of course that's an important part of our economy as well. We have all the trade rhetoric seemed to come out fast and furious in the first couple of weeks, and it's kind of calmed down now. We're talking more about how we're going to bargain together rather than fight each other. Treasury Secretary Bessent gave us an update yesterday. It was kind of upbeat, 15 nations standing in line. But I got one simple question. There are a lot of countries out there who want to make a deal with us right now. Thank goodness they do. As many as 70 total. Do we have enough people to do that? I mean, it's a pretty complicated process when you're working with 2 or even 1 like China. But with all these others, are there enough folks to be doing it in time for the economy to get moving?
Yes, and here's why, in my opinion, we need to do it. Except with respect to countries that are trying to hurt you. except with respect to countries that are trying to hurt you. The only good tariff is a dead tariff. Tariffs are government intervention. With a tariff, a government puts its thumb on the scale. That interferes with people's freedom to freely exchange goods and services. Now, we all know that many countries throughout the world use tariffs and trade barriers to hurt the American economy and the American people. President Trump said he had enough. He said, if you raise your tariffs, I'm going to raise mine. And then an astounding thing happened. Instead of these countries bowing up and fighting us, they said, well, let's make a deal. Let's lower our tariffs. And that's what we're in the process of doing right now. And I think we ought to lower tariffs, except with respect to countries that hate us and are trying to hurt us. Mm-hmm. We ought to lower these tariffs as low as we can, and our goal ought to be in zero. I've been preaching for 2 weeks on the Senate floor, saying I don't want to be at war with Canada. I love Canada. The people of Canada are great. Let's both go to zero tariffs. And competition makes us all better, and let the best product at the best price win. Well, that's where I hope the president's headed.
I don't want to work our way too much into weeds, but there is a specific object that's standing in the way of making a deal, which is that the trade tariffs, being completely reciprocal, they added in, and a lot of the hardcore folks like Peter Navarro added into it. It's not just how much they are tariffing us. It's whether we have a trade imbalance, and they have worked that into the equation of how much our tariffs against other countries should be. Should we remove that part of it and just do, tariff to tariff?
Well, if you go to zero tariffs and you still have a trade surplus or trade deficit, as the case may be, that's the market speaking. That's the market saying we prefer these goods and our services at this price as opposed to others. And I think that's free enterprise. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah.
We do have trade deficits in goods with many countries. But with respect to many countries, we have a trade surplus in services.
Yeah.
That is a good thing. I just think, and I think this is, I was just going to say, I think where the president's headed, I hope so, is to reduce tariffs and stop other countries from taking advantage of us. Now, China's a different story.
Yes.
I'm taking China out of the equation for now.
Yeah, exactly. And it does look like we're making not only deals with Europeans, but also deals with a lot of Asian countries like Japan, like Vietnam, Thailand, which would kind of isolate our number one enemy in the world, which is China. Ironically, they're also one of our largest trading partners, but that might, if the countries in Asia, as well as the countries in Europe, are isolated from trade with China, won't China have to come running to us to make a deal?
Yes, and eventually China will make a deal. It doesn't have a choice. Its economy is on a journey to the ocean floor.
Yeah.
They're an export economy. We buy 4 or 5 times more Chinese stuff than they buy American stuff. So we can wait them out. Now, it hurts both sides. But President Xi knows in his heart and in his head, well, if he has a heart, he knows in his head that he's going to have to make a deal sooner or later.
Yeah.
I hope he chooses to do it sooner.
You are on the Gulf of the newly named America, the Gulf of America, your state of Louisiana. And I'm just wondering, Scott Besson and others have been talking about, in fact, it's been talked about for years by organizations like McKinsey and Company, that we can get a lot more oil very responsibly out of the Gulf of Mexico, as much as 2 million more barrels a day out of the Gulf of America, than we are getting now. Scott Besson spoke to that. I believe we have that soundbite. Could you roll that? Or no, it's Interior Secretary Burgum. That soundbite. Roll it.
Right.
President Biden, 625 million acres he tried to wipe off of offshore drilling opportunities. And through this mapping exercise, 23% increase, Maria, in the potential just in one part of the Gulf of America. And as you say, billions of barrels of potential down there. And this is all going to help, again, make energy affordable and provide national security for America.
So could those permits all be done by the executive power, or would the Senate and the Congress come in and as usual, make a mess of things?
Well, I'd like to have belt and suspenders. I think the president, the executive branch has a lot of authority, but I'd like to see Congress act. It'll be difficult because many of my Democratic friends just don't like fossil fuels. I think that's unrealistic, as I've said before. We have to have fossil fuels in the greatest economy in all of human history. My car doesn't run, as I've also said before, off pixie dust and unicorn urine. The oil and gas is in the Gulf. Yeah. But there's one precondition. You've got to drill for it. And President Biden and his woke mafia wouldn't let us drill. And they wouldn't let us export LNG either, for that matter.
Yeah. And by the way, electric cars have to get their energy from someplace too, and usually it comes from fossil fuels. Not all the time, but usually it does. Senator, have a wonderful, blessed, holy weekend, and have a great Easter. Thank you so much for coming in.
Tell Kudlow to give you some of his money for working today.
All right. I'll tell him. I don't know if it'll do any good at all, but I'll tell him. Thank you. I appreciate it. Good to see you.